Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel. So over the time that I have worked with Toyota, I have observed a lot of strange decisions and strange things that they have done. Some of them they have done in the past, some of them they still do. And that information comes from my long career as a Toyota Master Diagnostic Technician for over a decade with a Toyota dealership. And currently I own my own shop that specializes in Toyota and Lexus. I've observed a lot of stuff, and I want to share some of them with you. And the intent of this video is maybe Toyota is watching out there. Some of the stuff that's still going on, you could do better. Let's just put it this way. Nothing groundbreaking, sometimes it's little stuff, but let's get into the first one. You'll see what I mean. So let's make it better by running it hotter. The Toyota Tundra, not the new one with the V6 and all the drama about that. No, let's talk about the good old V8, second generation Tundra. So when the Tundra first came out, 2007, it had an external transmission cooler, which is the best idea for a truck primarily meant to tow, even though they're really pushing the off-road stuff. That's not really, you don't take a giant truck like that off-road. Moving past that now. 2007, all the way to 19, they had an external transmission cooler, which was great. Then 2019, they up and decided, well, we don't need that. So from 19 to 21, there is no transmission cooler. A lot of folks really dislike that because you will see high transmission temperatures on these. But did you know that that was actually not the strange thing that they've done? Hear me out here. 2007 all the way to 2013, the pre-facelift Tundra had an external transmission cooler. Everything was great. It was set right in front. You open the hood and the grill comes up. There it is. Big transmission cooler, super easy to access. Anything hits it, you replace it. Very simple replacement, and life is wonderful. Then come 2014, and that's when things really became strange. Most folks are actually not aware of this. So they decided, because of the change of the grille, now the grille is part of the car, now it doesn't come up with the hood for the facelift, they decided, well, let's integrate the transmission cooler, external, with the condenser. So now, if you have to replace the condenser, you also have to replace the cooler, which is very expensive. And if you have a leak in the cooler, you have to also replace the condenser. Now it's all buried in there in this very complicated fashion. There is one thing I'll say about that. Usually Toyota does this really well, but in that case, they didn't do it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's all I'm going to say. First, we went from the cool cooler to the strange cooler, and then we decided, well, we'll just cut it all out together. That's one strange thing they've done on that one. But what about the oldies, back when they used to build them like tanks for real? Well, come the Toyota MR2. It's a mid-engine car. We'll give it a small break. Coolant bleeding on the MR2 is one of the most complicated, most strange things, because the radiator is all the way in the front and have these giant pipes that run all the way to the back to the engine and back, and then the heater core is in the front. So bleeding an MR2 is kind of a process, and a long one. Understandably so, because it's an MR2. Mid-engine car, it's complicated, we understand. Plus, it's not exactly a high mainstream car that's all over the place. But here's one that is also not mainstream, but more of a normal car. Toyota Celica, the latest generation Toyota Celica before they were discontinued. So that basically has an engine from a Corolla, just flat out from a Corolla. Exactly the same, super simple engine. Decently reliable, does like to burn oil if you don't take care of it, but for the most part, it's a pretty reliable car. It's a little fun to drive, cool looking, whatnot, great. Except the cooling system. The Celica has such a steep dive into the nose, and they could not at the time decide to make a small radiator for it. So instead of doing that, they decided to turn the radiator on its side, but that was not still enough, because now the engine is super high and the radiator is super low, and you'll never be able to bleed it. So here's how the bleeding process goes for that, which is just unbelievable. Why would they do stuff like that? They insisted on putting the overflow bottle, which has the radiator cap and everything, in front of the radiator. They could just put it on the side, high up, higher than the engine. They didn't. So when you want to bleed the coolant on that, you have to take all the covers. This has a lot of covers. Pull that bottle, which has very short hoses, stretch it out, sit it on top of the hood latch, which it does have a cutout where it sits on top of the hood latch. Then you can bleed it, and even then it's very difficult. And then as these cars get older, every time you do that, if you're not careful, you can break the little plastic piece where the hose connects to, and now you're putting a new radiator instead. Just don't understand why they do stuff like that without thinking, but the top one with cooling and bleeding and stuff comes from the modern times. Let's go check that out. The modern times, and where's my bleeder? So the 2GR FE engine, it's a 3.5 liter V6, basically used in almost all Toyota models with a V6 at some point, now long discontinued and gone. Great engine, very tricky to bleed because of the way the V is shaped and everything, and it doesn't have a valley in the middle. Very tricky engine to bleed, but the engineers that initially designed that engine deemed it we should have a bleeder in the middle so it would be able to bleed that center section that loves to hold air in this engine. Life is wonderful. You have a bleeder. I'll leave a video right here in case you have one of these engines. Very simple process once you know what to do with the bleeder. Very simple, bleed very easy, and life is great. Then right around 2016-17, they decided to update the 2GR into the 2GR FKS. Same 3.5 liter V6, but now it has D4S, direct injection, it has all this technology and whatever. Except, I feel like the initial team that designed the 2GR FE retired, and then the team that updated the 2GR FKS, they were just like, well, let's just make a few changes and move on with life. One of those changes was, where's my bleeder? There's no bleeder anymore. And bleeding a 2GR FKS is a process, and a very dangerous one, because if you don't know what to look for and what you are doing, you could overheat the engine and destroy it, completely destroy it. For those that asked, I actually do not have a video on bleeding this yet. I am working on it. We have one actually scheduled, and we are hoping to film it soon, but it's a very tricky process, and all that engine needs is a bleeder. Where is my bleeder, Toyota? Well, it's long gone. Toyota probably has the worst distribution of options. Let me elaborate. Most manufacturers, when they are about to roll out new tech, they're going to update their infotainment, their design language, whatnot, they're going to start with their flagship model, and then it kind of trickles down to their smaller, less expensive models, not the flagship. Toyota's never done it that way, and lately it's always backwards. We always start updating the little guy, and then the big guy get updated later. It makes buyers always interested. It's like, why does the economy car has better options than my very expensive flagship? Let me give you a prime example that I remember. 2014 Corolla. That generation, when it first came out, standard LED headlights. Did the Highlander get that? Nope. Did the 4Runner get that? Nope. Did every single Land Cruiser get HID headlights? Nope. It's like, what's going on here? Why is my base model has more options than my flagship model? They love to do that across the board. And then 2018 came about with the new generation Camry. Even though I really dislike panoramic sunroofs, and I wish we get rid of them altogether, but sometimes you have no choice. 2018 Camry, panoramic sunroof on the higher trims. Then 2019 Avalon, which is the flagship, no panoramic sunroof, even as an option. Now some people will like that, and I get it. The disaster down the road, but some people will want that. These are options. This is how you promote a flagship. No panoramic sunroof on the Avalon. And when we asked at the time, it's like, wait, why does the Avalon not have a panoramic sunroof? Well, the Avalon buyer does not demand one. Who's the Avalon buyer? At the time, that was the question. Who's the Avalon buyer? Because the world is turned upside down when there is an Avalon TRD, and 99% of the Avalon buyer is an older gentleman who wants a quiet, refined, long wheelbase sedan. Let's just leave it at that. Are we going to stargaze, or we're not going to stargaze? Continuing on the strange option distribution, they love to make an option for one car and then just make it for one model for a few years and then cut it and you'll never hear about it again. Prime example of that is the Stargaze sunroof. The latest generation Toyota Venza is probably one of the biggest hidden gems and the best very Toyota-like Toyota to come out from Toyota land. Hope that big word makes sense. They came out with the new generation Venza. We loved it. It was a quintessential Toyota, no drama, no fuss. Very nice car, very Lexus-like. Then they decided to discontinue it 2024 to replace it with another car that does exactly the same thing. Crown Insignia. I've had a chance to drive. It's actually a very nice car. But why are we discontinuing the Venza and its Stargaze sunroof? And why did it have a Stargaze sunroof to begin with? I have to say this because I really like the Venza. You could still have a chance to buy one. It's truly a hidden gem. And I don't understand why they are discontinuing it. The Not Youthful Scion. Do y'all remember Scion? That was, that is one of the strangest things that Toyota did. So somebody at Toyota decided, aha, we have a luxury brand, we have a boring brand, reliable. Now let's make a youthful brand, which, in case you haven't caught note of it, was a complete failure since every single Scion model except the FRS and the TC was generally favored by seniors because they were cheap cars that are reliable, that are easy to get in and out of, and they have great visibility. So that was the Scion buyer. But there's a lot more strange things about Scion behind the scenes a little bit. So did you know that Scions for the longest time, right up till the end, they come new from the truck, they have no radio. They literally have a paper where the radio is with a picture of a radio, because you as a buyer can choose which radio goes in option you want, and then we would install it at the dealership. And one iconic one was the, well, it's a strange car to begin with, Scion IQ. That has Bluetooth. That was the era when we were starting with Bluetooth and kind of hands-free calling, all this good stuff. It did not come with a microphone, and nobody knew what was going on until much later when, wait a second, we have to install a microphone when you install this radio, this radio, this radio. Yes, sir, but that's all the radios. Yes, you have to install a microphone with all of them. It was a very strange installation. The whole radio thing with Scion was just, thank you very much, Toyota, for realizing that and moving on from Scion. Great cars, don't get me wrong, but it's like, why didn't you just make them Toyotas? They're exactly the same thing, so what's the point? Then the Matrix, not the movie, the great Toyota Matrix. One of the possibly the best hatchbacks to come out of Toyota land, except when they decided to put the 2AZ low tension rings in one. That's a whole different conversation. But the Toyota Matrix is one of the best hatchbacks to ever come out of Toyota. It makes sense. It was more functional than a Corolla because it had the hatchback. Great car, super reliable, no thrills, no drama, great car. Except when they decided, we don't want this model. I mean, it's selling well, it's doing everything right. Why would we keep making it? Let's cut it out. They stopped making the Matrix in 2013. That's okay, things happen. Then in 2016, they came out with a Scion IM. Basically a Matrix, because it's a Corolla with a hatchback in the back. That's okay. But then Scion decided, there's no more Scion after 2016. So 2017 rolled around. We have the Toyota Corolla IM. M being a Matrix, but we just don't want to call it that in case people think it's a Matrix. Why wouldn't we want people to think it's a Matrix? It was one of the greatest hatchbacks you made. Moving on from that. Here's the best part though. They made it in 2016, Scion IM, 2017 and 18 under Corolla IM, and then 2019 they just decided, we're just going to scrap the whole idea. And now we have the Toyota Corolla hatchback and the Toyota Corolla sedan. Why don't we just call it the Matrix? Do we have a problem with the word Matrix? I don't know. But you know what I know? It gets a lot worse with the Toyota Yaris. Oh, the Toyota Yaris disaster. Toyota Yaris is one of the best small economy hatchbacks to come out of Toyota reliability-wise. Nobody will complain with the Yaris. You bought an EcoBox, but it's such a great one. all the way to when they decided to get rid of Scion. See, 2016 was a very interesting year for Scion because they came out with the Scion IM, then they discontinued it the same year. But they also struck a deal with Mazda because, I don't know, that was the year they forgot how to make cars, small cars. They made a deal with Mazda to make the Scion IA, which was great. Mazda 2, not great. 2016, they introduced the Scion IA. 2016, they discontinued the Scion IA because they discontinued the entire Scion brand. That's okay. Things happen. But then, a few years later, they decided to introduce the Yaris IA and completely discontinue one of the best small hatchbacks they make. Only in the US, though. Everywhere else in the world kept going. Only in the US when it was selling great. Let's discontinue the Yaris. Let's take a Mazda 2, slap a Toyota badge on it, call it some weird name, Yaris IA, because we have to keep the Scion thing going. Let's go for it. And not only that, we're going to make a sedan and a hatchback. I don't understand this whole going back and forth with the Yaris. They still make the Yaris overseas. It's one of the greatest cars. And they actually continue to make the Yaris, the good one, the real one, the Toyota one, until they completely switched it to the Yaris IA, and then it just, I don't even know when they discontinued it, because nobody cares. It's a horrible car. Not because Mazda didn't make a good car, don't get me wrong, but because the Yaris was such a good car, no other little Mazda will stand next to it. That's the problem. But that problem gets a lot worse when we go back to the 90s. Toyota over the years have been really good at lending their cars to other manufacturers, and the other manufacturers make us the badge, sticks it on the car, and let's move on. But lately that has not been the case with some models. But did you know that this actually started in the 90s? Most people are not aware of this. Let's walk through it. So at some point in the 90s, I'm not going to get into it in the details, GM and Toyota became great friends, and they decided to do a lot of joint ventures. Some of the stuff that came out of their joint venture were the GO Prism, and then the Chevy Prism, or however you want to call it, which is basically a Corolla, and then the Pontiac Vibe, which was a Matrix. Great car. Horrible to service today because nobody will sell you parts with warranty. But then sometime in the 90s, there was a catch. Does anybody not remember the Chevy Cavalier? I don't remember it because this is one dark era of GM that we all don't want to remember, when they made absolutely disposable cars. They were horrible to look at, horrible to own, super unreliable, and let's turn that page and move on. GM is in a much better place today. Did you know that part of that joint venture was Toyota was going to supply some cars and GM was going to put their name on it, sell it. Toyota was also going to do the same. And the car they chose was none other than the Cavalier. So there was actually a Toyota Cavalier. Yeah. But here's the strange part. Here's the Toyota part. Did they take this car and sell it somewhere in the world where they have very little remote access just to satisfy the joint venture and just move past this nightmare? No, they didn't sell it in the US because obviously we have the Cavalier, nobody will touch it with a 10-foot pole. But they decided to sell the Toyota Cavalier, none other than their home country, Japan, where in the 90s, the build quality of the Japanese manufacturers, mainly Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, even Nissan at that time, they were in their prime of build quality. And here's that horrendous GM glued together 90s tiny little car. It's not reliable, not good to look at, feels horrible, horrible build quality and everything. What are they thinking? And that takes us to the brand swapping that happened lately. I guess they can't build a sports car anymore. They decided to do the FRS, the GR86, whatever, with Subaru. Well, at least Subaru is somewhat close to Toyota. And of course, there's the Yaris IA, Mazda stuff. But then the Toyota Supra. One of the biggest names in Toyota is made by BMW. There is a second when I think there was ever a Toyota Cavalier. BMW Supra doesn't seem so bad when we think about the Toyota Cavalier. Of course, didn't sell anything in Japan. Why would anyone buy a Toyota Cavalier? Maybe if it was given away to them for free, but otherwise, why would you buy a Toyota Cavalier if you're in Japan when you have all the great options of all the high quality cars they made in the 90s? Where's my parts, Toyota? Not back order stuff, whatnot. This is the last one and kind of the one that is still going today. Toyota has one thing that makes people buy their cars in high numbers, making them one of the biggest manufacturers in the world. They make reliable cars. They are a conservative company. They don't experiment with things. They have their experimentations, as we've seen in this video, but they're usually small, silly stuff. But what makes their cars reliable is not the great engineering over the top. They do have great engineering, but their conservativeness. They make a good recipe, they keep improving on it, they don't change it just to keep up with the trends. That's how they do things, which means their parts are high quality, which means their parts are very expensive when you compare them. And we're not talking about like high-end luxury cars, but everyday cars. They're usually one of the more expensive parts, because that's what makes a Toyota good, is their high quality parts. And here's the problem. They have a strange habit of making you buy a very expensive parts and then a herd of little parts with it just to install it. They love to not include gaskets with things. You go buy a throttle body. Well, I need to replace that gasket with the throttle body, but does it come with it? No. You go buy a thermostat. Well, we have to replace the gasket with every single thermostat, right? So why do I have to buy a separate gasket to it? And the list goes on and on about so many components. Their parts are all over the place. You want to buy an engine, you will have to buy it in boxes and assemble it yourself. They don't sell a long block, except when it's a special case or whatever the case may be. But normally, you can go buy a long block. Parts are already expensive. Why do we have to buy the expensive part and then keep buying little gaskets and things just to install it? Why doesn't it all come with it? Since we have to do it that way. They've always done it this way, and that's something I genuinely wish they would change, because their parts are very expensive. When you add all the other stuff, it just gets a bit much. Folks, Toyota is a decent company. They've done their fair share of mistakes, because you know what? Nobody is perfect. It's a company ran by humans, products made by humans for humans, and we are all imperfect. But I highlighted some of the strangest things that I've seen over the years that just made me wonder. It's like, are we all on the same page? Things happen. And the Scion brand was an experiment. In my book, it was a failed experiment, a strange one. But they did make some pretty interesting cars. Actually, they were all very reliable, exception with a few. Scion TC maybe. But overall, the Scion experiment was just the kind of the quintessential strange Toyota decision. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.